Welcome to our video series, The Startup Journey. We all admire the success of a startup, but behind it lies a lot of hard work and sacrifices by the founder, especially if they are building for the Bharat segment or the low and moderate income segment. In this series, we will hear about founders' journey, their challenges and aspirations, and much more. All of these startups have been supported by Financial Inclusion Lab, an accelerator program incubated with CICO and supported by MicroSave Consulting. You can know more about these startups by clicking the link in the description below. To begin, can you state your name and the name of your startup?
I am Prathmesh Kant and my startup is Aggois Business Solutions Private Limited.
Can you tell briefly what was Aggois doing?
So Aggois was into agriculture finance, and essentially we worked on the layer to bring existing financial models closer to farmer, and ours was a very farmer centric approach and farmer centric design. And for example, we created products like receivable financing that can instantly release money into farmers account, and they can get paid higher than what APMC channel can pay. And then we brought in input on credit finance so that they can shun relationship with local money lenders and hence be free to sell at any channel of choice post harvest. And we also offered financing against storage, which can actually facilitate farmers to be able to use that model. So currently storage based financing is used by traders, not farmers.
This is interesting, Prathmesh, because agri financing has been one of the biggest bottleneck to revolutionize the agriculture in India. Good to know that Aggois was working so deeply into it. But just curious, what you were doing before you started Aggois?
So before Aggois, I was doing another startup, and that was essentially at a cusp of agriculture, finance and travel. This one is finance and agriculture. Finance happens to be area of strength and interest, and prior to my previous startup called Fairbond, I was at Goldman Sachs and doing quantitative finance.
This is a very interesting journey to leave the corporate world, begin your first entrepreneur journey, and then working in this segment. What triggered? What was the initial motivation to start Aggois?
Yeah, so I was pretty happy living the corporate kind of life, but there was one thing that was always at the back of my mind, right? So there is certain work that I do with passion, right? And then what's the impact of the work? So if I simply ask that question, what is the impact of work done good at Goldman Sachs, then probably it is about making portfolio of some HNIs even bigger, right? And I wanted to do something that can actually impact masses and preferably in India. So that was one big trigger, and then of course I needed to prepare for it, right? Be financially healthy, save for some good amount of time. So it took a while, and then finally in mid-14 I started up with two other friends from different departments at Goldman, and we ventured into travel, and there we created Price Lock that gave undecided air traveler ability to lock airfare. So that product is now live on Make My Trip, for example, right? So we believe we were early in the market for that idea. And so since end of 17, we have been doing Aggois.
Understood. So, Prathmesh, this is interesting. What is your background? I mean, not this connection with the low-income segment or willingness to create impact is not something which comes naturally for everyone. So, what is your background?
Yeah, so I have been born and brought up in Ranchi, and my village is in Bihar, and very farmer-centric community. And I have in my early life and most of my life, I have actually seen people in LMI segment, and and have developed deep empathy, right? And one question was, how can I actually serve them in long run, right?
So in your journey with Aggois, I know that you have exited now, or sort of Aggois has been acquired.
So yeah, so M&A process.
Yeah, but just curious, what was the inflection point? Because you said that this is your second entrepreneurship journey, right? When did you realize, or when this realization dawned on you that you are meant to be an entrepreneur?
So yeah, that's an interesting question. So I believe I always wanted to do something on my own. That idea was already there. Probably there was some fear at back of my mind, and some, of course, conditioning from the world, how one is supposed to live their life, right? Be born, study, get good grades, because that's the key to future life, right? Then of course get married, and then have children early on, okay, not late, right? Then do a good job, retire with good money, then live rest of your life in some very peaceful neighborhood at home, right? So yeah, so these are the kind of ideas that has been fed into everyone's mind, right? And there is nothing right about it, even nothing wrong about it. It's just a choice, right? There are a lot of choices that a person can exercise for himself, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, a part of that was that societal and family conditioning. But over a period of time, I shunned all that, and I was able to essentially live life of passion. And so living life of choice, living life of passion, not be bound by the existing ideas that the world feeds you. So these were something, and it has been a journey, of course. It didn't happen in one day, right? It has happened over a period of time. And yes, the decision to actually quit a job and do startup was, of course, that decision got to be very quick, right? So that has to happen quickly. And then after that, of course, it's all about that kahawat, right? Okhli mein sar dal diya to musal se kya dal.
Right. So those who are into building a startup, especially those who are in the early stage, one of the key problems for them is how do you create a team around it, because it is your passion, it is your idea, but how do you sort of pull people who are relevant for your startup and build a team, because no matter what problem you're solving, ultimately it's a team which will get to a solution.
Yes.
So how did you build your team when you were running your startups?
So team is the most important thing, of course, rightly said. And yes, I've made some wrong decisions in team building, and have learnt over a period of time. And so since 14 I've been doing startups, so there has been quite a learning, right? So I won't say that I have taken, I built a perfect team, but I have learned, and I can give some insights on how can we create a workable and good team, right? So one very important thing is we need to bring people who are aligned with the values. That's very important. Alignment, right? So money, of course, motivates, but money can't be the only motivator, and especially in startup, it got to be something more, right? It really has to be zeal and passion to beyond money to cause some impact, and also it also has to be team spirit, right? Just sports and team spirit, right? We together play, and we love winning. Even if we lose, we are together, and we make amends, and we make effort so that we play next game better. We give our best, right? So the best kind of team, of course, alignment with values is something again that can't be established too soon, right? So the best practical approach is to bring people whom we have already known from our previous past lives, right? During our schooling, college time, our work time, right? So and some of the best team members comes from our college time friends, relations, right? So and of course referral is the best way forward, right? So I need not bring everyone. even if I bring, let's say I need some 10 people in the team, even if I get some 3 or 4, those 3 and 4 people can refer other, right? So it's that chain. And of course, we bring people, we make a team. That's one aspect. Another equally important aspect is to actually keep people aligned and to retain them, right? So that's also equally important.
So what did you do for retention? Because I hear from so many founders that they bring the key people and then they leave for some reason.
Right. So of course, a manager typically, and also manager is not the right word to use. It's actually leading and managing a different word, right? So philosophically in startup, we have to be leading and not managing. Second, we need to give people free hand, right? And of course, no micromanagement, and we have to be tolerant about failures. It's just that we just allow people to act and to get work done their way, and if they are facing challenges, then be ready to help them, right? So that's one approach that motivates people. And secondly, also as leaders, we need to take ownership of career of people whom we lead, right? So if we are able to show them growth trajectory, of course people would stay motivated. And one really good thing that startup can offer, right, compared to corporate, right, it's not money of course corporate can offer better than startup, but there is one definite thing that startup can offer much better than corporate, and it is about getting up the curve really fast. Really fast. And depending upon the responsibilities that a person can take, the sky is the limit. And of course business also needs to do well, right, and subject to that, right? So if business is doing fine, there is growth, and if a person is really willing to learn new things, work hard and go next level, then of course the kind of growth a startup can give is unmatchable. Even no corporate can give that.
Right. In terms of managing the responsibilities, in terms of taking decisions which can have an impact on the company. Of course, the startup.
So in summary, creating new leaders. Right. As leader, we create new leader. We don't create follower.
Right. That's a good way to put it. So Prathmesh, I want to change track a bit. You have been part of Financial Inclusion Lab, which is jointly run by CIECO and MSC. What has been your experience? What kind of support did you get from it?
So the experience has been really good. So whatever they could support, they have supported with and being very proactive rather, right? And apart from all the regular portfolio support items, it has been the real tangible kind of support has been the all valuable networks, right? Which can help in fostering new kind of business relationships. For example, our NBFC relationship came from CII reference, right? And so and also they can help with mentoring if required, right? And even just startup helping each other out, right? With their experiences,
right,
which can be much more valuable than kitabi gyan. Right?
And over the years, you form a community, right? With the cohort, with other startup founders, and who are willing to help each other, because everybody is, I assume, are in the same boat.
Yeah. Yes.
So, Prathmesh, this question might sound a little philosophical, but what has been your learning as an entrepreneur?
Okay, so learning as an entrepreneur, so very philosophical answer: to live life unconventionally and differently, right? So and that life is also good, that life is also motivating, right? And so there is lot to life, right? So instead of living a conventional life like what society would set an example, right? So all this religion, society, culture will give best practices of living life, right? So, but there can be unconventional way of living life, and in fact, creating your own way of living life, which can be fulfilling, which can be rewarding, and which can also impact a lot of people, right? Being consistent with all religious philosophies, right? And yeah, and still you can live a great life, right?
Right. So let's break it down. Let's make it a little more tangible. So suppose in your early days,
Yeah.
right, when you started as an entrepreneur, what would be the key lessons that you want to share?
Sure. So during very early phase, the key lesson is go to market fast. Okay. Instead of thinking everything in our heads, that customer, this is a good product, this is a bad product, this will work, this will not work, this design is good, this design is not so good. Go early in the market, right? So even if product is 30, 40%, 50% ready, fine. It's fine to go to market. Market will create rest 50% of the product, and that will save a lot of time. So that's one key learning. And in right in startup number one, previous startup. Yeah.
Anything on the way one should approach funding, the one way one should approach users?
Sure. So yeah, you mean customer or user?
Customers.
Customers, right? Yeah, so customers are the key, of course, right? So we have to be very customer centric, and time and again we have to think from customer perspective, everything, right? And so whatever product we create, customer has to adopt, right? So uptake has to be there. So design has to be really simple and really intuitive from customer perspective, and even things like product pricing and other possible features, right, needs to come from customers, and hence we have to be in constant relationship with customer, and we need to constantly ask them questions, their needs, aspiration and pain point. These are some basic questions that we need to continuously ask our customer. It's not that we created good product, we got traction, we need to keep asking these questions always, right?
On the funding?
So on fundraise, what I would say is number one, try to reduce dependency on fundraise, okay, to the extent possible, and if possible, right, be bootstrapped to the extent possible, right, and generate revenue. Try to generate revenue or traction early on with least amount of resource as early as possible, right? So if one works in these areas, then fundraising will become easy. There is no guarantee on closure of fundraise. Okay, I would still say that raising money from contacts, that angel, is significantly easier than raising money from a venture capital or institutional investor. But eventually a startup would need to raise money from a venture capital, right, in order to grow, right, or there can be some alternatives to venture capital if applicable in some domains, right? So angel is something that one should definitely approach in early stage, right? But quickly focus needs to be on generating traction, getting more customer, getting more happy users, getting organic growth, getting more referrals, right? So these are some metrics that needs to be focused on early on, right? And then VC conversation also needs to start, right? And also have other sources of funding also in mind, right? So what can be non-VC sources of funding? Okay, in some cases there can be debt financing. In some cases, not all cases, right? For example, if we talk about agri-tech domain in general, lot of financing is for working capital, so that should ideally be taken from debt, not equity, right? So then there can be family office driven funds also being more active these days. Those can also be another source of funding, not necessarily VC funding, right? And there are also grants applicable from certain government programs and schemes, for a lot of areas in especially impact areas in which some entrepreneur works in. So those sources also should be tapped, right? And and finally, even if it comes to VC, right, then in some cases it might be easier to crack foreign VCs than Indian VCs. I would even say that. Yeah. So be open and try all these sources and don't rely on just one source, right? And to the extent possible, try to get up and running with revenue as early as possible, because even if you are able to raise fund, right, defending valuation is another thing that is important, right? And the best possible way to defend your valuation while raising fund is revenue.
No, I agree, but especially so-called funding winter might have made many startups realize that fact, that funding is not perennial. Ultimately, you have to be revenue positive.
Yes, of course.
So, but this might be a little closer to your heart, emotions, but you know, when you raise a startup, it's like raising a baby.
Yes.
Right? And no matter what, the dream is always to grow with your startup. So when you had to go for the merger and acquisition of Aggois, what was the feeling? I want to talk it for any founder, or at least those who are aspiring to be one, that not every startup, you know, goes on to be a successful, right? There are other stories also.
Yes. In fact, every time when we do a fundraise, we should keep a parallel M&A conversation active at that point of time, right? And be ready to take best of the both worlds, right? We need not raise fund, right? If there is a good valuation and M&A possibilities there, then that also might be a good option compared to raising fund and just growing it, right?
Understood.
So all I'm saying is generate that other option also and take best decision at every point of time, right? In our case, we early stages fund grant we were able to raise, no worries, but we raised family office fund. We had issues in VC fund, and it was, I would say, it was mostly around the definition of traction. Okay, so even the definition of traction there can be subjectivity in the definition. Number of 1,000 can be traction, number of 10,000 cannot be traction, depending upon thought process, thesis, especially in areas where there have not been too many investments. So all that is a possibility. So we had our own choices to make, and so thankfully we had a few M&A threads open, and so in the process of closing on one, fingers crossed.
Right.
Talk to as many people as possible, right? One, and synergy is something that is very important to establish, and especially establishing that the acquiring entity or the entity in which we are going to merge, we have different strengths, right? Different strength. Strength can be a piece of technology, or it can be a particular geographical presence, right? Or it can be a certain class of customers, but there got to be some complementary value, right? And so things got to be closed in a time-bound manner. So that is also very important, right? So
No, so this was what I wanted to clarify through you, that every startup does not need to raise millions. There can be other journey for that startup, right?
Yes.
And it ultimately depends on what value or how the maximum value can be provided to the end users.
Correct.
If it can be joining hands, then be it.
Yes.
If it can be go on and raise millions, then that is another.
Yes. Eventually, the one VC thesis is winner takes all. Though I don't believe in that philosophy personally, winner takes all. There is nothing of that kind. There will always be multiple people and staying together and adding value, especially in domain like agriculture, where there can really be many players and always there to stay. So But if entity got to become very big, right, eventually people need to join hand, right, in any domain. There got to be some consolidation, right. So yes, each and every participating entity needs to come up with some unique value and proposition. So yes, some uniqueness, unique positioning, some specific category of customers, right. These are some values that any startup can have, which can essentially give them good valuation during time of M&A, right.
So, Prathmesh, with this, I would like to close it. But before I do, what would be your key lessons for any budding entrepreneur?
Any budding entrepreneur
Who would like to work in this segment?
In this segment,
Right.
okay. So one is, of course, be brave, okay. Be patient, I would say. So some patience is required. Don't jump to conclusion. Have any conversation with open mind. So there is one learning that needs to be undone when someone comes from corporate into startup. It is about coming into any conversation with some preconceived notions, and essentially coming up with that performance pressure that I need to close a deal. Of course, let go of that entire thing and have a free, open conversation. That's the best way to understand a customer. And even if you go to someone's house, drink tea and just talk, that can be more valuable than any corporate kind of conversation, right? So really talking with patience, understanding, right? And simplicity, I would say another thing. Things got to be very simple, right? If I write any sentence, if things are sequential and flowy, fine. The moment there is if else, first if else, 70% customer will drop, right? Gaussian curve.
Right.
Next if else, 90% gone, right? Next if else, 95% gone.
Right.
So things got to be really simple. No if else but, right? Right. And even the piece of technology and design, simplicity is a value, right? So here we need to actually appreciate simplicity in complexity, right? And if we say that we are bringing existing models closer to farmer, it is all about simple communication, simple design, right? Or demolishing all that resistance so that people can actually use it, building that layer of trust even. So it's all about that, right?
Can you explain a little bit more? This is more from the customer angle. Of course, the problem needs to be identified better, whether it is worth solving or not.
Yes.
Right. But once the problem is identified, what are the first 1 or 2 steps which a founder needs to take right?
Yeah, so even the problem is identified after a set of conversations with customer and realizing that of course there is a problem to be solved, there is something to be created, which some differential proposition to be created, and then finally at the end of the day I can get paid also for it, right? So assuming this layer is clear, right, then of course we need to be conceptualizing and creating some product, some basic minimum. So I think that's called MVP, right? Yeah, MVP. So we need to create that and take that to customer, and we need to actually get going. So often lot of time customer says something means something different, even that is possible, right? So that early iteration is a must, right? And early and with least amount of time and least amount of money. So we need to be very cautious about time first and then money, right? So lost money can be made good, lost time will never be made good, right? So time is more important than money. So that way we really need to be converging with our customers fast. And once we have some good traction and good interaction with customer, then we need to build on that.
Understood. Yeah. So what I'm hearing is, don't go with preconceived notion. Right?
Yes.
Your idea is your idea till you get the customer traction.
Correct. Don't go with and idea will evolve over a period of time. So nothing is fixed in the world, right? So larger idea, right? So we need to allow that margin of error, right? Largely this is the idea. So that's the term we use, right? not saying this is the idea. No, right?
No, that is very fantastically put, and thanks for joining us today. I'm sure that all the budding entrepreneurs will learn a lot from your interaction, and I hope that this learning that you have shared with us will be helpful to them when they start their entrepreneurial. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.